Belarus has pardoned 31 Ukrainian citizens as part of an agreement between President Alexander Lukashenko and U.S. counterpart Donald Trump, Lukashenko's spokesperson Natalia Eismont told State TV on Saturday. The Ukrainians, who were not identified, are being handed over to Kiev right now, according to Eismont. She said the Ukrainian prisoners had committed criminal offenses on the territory of Belarus and stressed that their release was aimed at creating conditions for the settlement of the armed conflict in the neighboring state, referring to the war in Ukraine. Video footage showing the release of prisoners has been shared in social media. The prisoners can be seen brought to Ukraine in the bus belonging to the Coordination Headquarters for the Treatment of Prisoners of War, a government agency. Trump had pushed to free political prisoners in contact with Lukashenko. In exchange of the return of Ukrainians, Washington has partly lifted sanctions on Belarus state carrier Belavia, allowing it to service and buy parts for its fleet, which includes Boeing aircraft. It should be noted that Belarus has often accused government critics and opponents of extremism, imposing prison terms that last for years, though it was not yet known what charges the released Ukrainians had faced. Previously, Lukashenko had released several dozen political detainees, including well-known dissidents, journalists, and religious figures. Human rights groups say more than 1,000 political prisoners are still held in Belarus. Being Russia's closest ally, Belarus has supported Russia's nearly 4 years of war of invasion in Ukraine. The country recently held joint drills with Russia and hosts dozens of Russian nuclear weapons.
The fourth year of a full-scale war with Ukraine has led to the destruction of traditional governance mechanisms in Russia. Security agencies operate autonomously, and a systemic conflict is brewing within the government. Power is becoming an arena for escalating conflicts over sharply diminishing resources, writes Important Stories, citing sources close to the Kremlin and Russian security agencies. The system built by the Kremlin over 2 decades is disintegrating into autonomous interest groups that operate without regard for the center and are directly clashing with one another. One source says resources are rapidly dwindling and the struggle for them has become systemic and all-encompassing. According to him, no loyalty and no connections guarantee anything anymore. This state is characterized by the disappearance of previous informal agreements and the loss of the basic rules of the game that previously kept the elite within manageable boundaries. According to sources, representatives of the security agencies have stopped coordinating their actions with the government and the domestic policy bloc of the Putin administration. They are now acting autonomously, guided by their own interests. FSB officers also speak of an internal reversal within the repressive apparatus. One current officer admitted that all equipment and resources have been redirected toward wiretapping the government, regional administrations, and other agencies. The foreign agent designation used for years to pressure the opposition and independent activists is no longer a centralized tool of the presidential administration. According to sources, the designation is now being distributed without coordination with the Kremlin, and it includes owners of large businesses and even pro-government spokespeople. First Deputy Chief of the Presidential Administration, Sergei Kirienko, responsible for domestic policy since 2016, also found himself at the epicenter of this hidden struggle. Sources claim that security forces often detain officials, even those appointed by him, without prior notification to the presidential administration. The security services believe that the tension surrounding Kyrienko is also due to his close ties with Yuri Kovalchuk, a shareholder in the bank Russia, who is considered the second person in the country after Putin in elite circles. For the security agencies, Kovalchuk remains a political rival, and the war has only exacerbated inter-clan tensions. According to sources, the longer Russia's war against Ukraine continues and the greater its impact on the Russian economy, the more acute the inter-clan conflicts become. Earlier, in an article for the Sunday Times, influential British commentator Mark Galeotti analyses the decline of 72-year-old Putin, a man who once seemed a calculating and cold politician, but has now turned into an aging dictator who has lost touch with reality. Putin remains convinced he's a genius, but the reality is different. Everyone who ever dared to oppose him has disappeared, some in exile, some in prison, and some in the grave. Today, only sycophants and fanatics remain around him, repeating that everything is going according to plan. The reality, however, is different. The country is bleeding in Ukraine, the economy is crumbling, and the leader himself increasingly resembles a decrepit monarch locked in his own palace. Galeotti writes that the world is now dealing not just with Putin, but with Putin squared, a man who lost the ability to doubt and perceive the truth. He has surrounded himself with phantoms. He has stopped listening even to those closest to him, advisors, bankers, military officers. Any attempt to convey bad news to him ends in silence or scorched careers. Even his disastrous decision to invade Ukraine was born not out of strength, but out of fear of being forgotten, out of fear that history would write of him as the man under whom Russia fell apart. The result: millions of ruined lives, hundreds of thousands killed, dozens of cities razed to the ground. Putin is aging. He has less energy, less control, less trust in the people. He's afraid to appoint a successor for fear of looking like a lame duck. He's afraid of losing the war, but even more afraid of admitting he's already lost. He has locked himself in a golden cage, writes Galeotti. He is consumed by fear, paranoia, and the desire to appear great, although he has long been ridiculous. The Russian elite long ago stopped respecting him, but they still fear him. The country operates on autopilot, and the dictator himself dreams of only one thing: to have his name written into textbooks, not as a murderer, not as a coward, but as Russia's savior. But even that won't be granted. History has already decided, the British political scientist emphasizes.